Hey there, my name is Sage and you are watching D&D Daily. Today I'm doing a character build. I had a buddy who was talking to me about him wanting to build a rogue barbarian class, and it got me thinking that, what are the synergies there? So I started looking into it and I was actually pretty surprised to find out how many synergies there are. So I made a character build and I'm going to share that with you today. Let's jump into it. So here we are on D&D Beyond. The character's name is the Roguearian. I don't have any of the extra content enabled right now. I do, however, have the Tasha's optional features enabled, both the optional class features and the customize your origin. As for the race, I've chosen Aarakocra. Now, the reason for that is they have the highest flying speed, and that flying speed is going to be very important. However, this build would work with any flying speed, or just high speed in general. Because we took Tasha's origin features, we get to choose where our bonus points go. I have chosen Constitution for our +1 and Strength for our +2. As for stats, I tend to work within point buy, and here's how it looks. We have 17 in Strength, 14 in Dexterity, 14 in Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 12 Charisma. Now, our first interesting decision point comes in as which one do we take first, Rogue or Barbarian? And here is how it breaks down. The Barbarian is going to start with a D12, and you do get the maximum of your hit die on the first level. So if you go Barbarian first, you're always going to have 4 HP more than you would if you went Rogue. You also have proficiency in the Constitution and Strength saving throws. But if you multi-class into Rogue, you're going to start out with 4 skills instead of Barbarian's 2, and then when you multi-class into Rogue, you get a +1. So you're going to get an extra skill than you would if you started as Barbarian. And then you're going to have proficiency in Intelligence and Dexterity saving throws. I decided to start with Barbarian for a couple different reasons. The +4 HP is nice, but the main one is that when we have proficiency in Constitution saving throws, and as a Barbarian we give advantage on Dexterity saving throws, it's almost like we have proficiency in both Dexterity and Constitution, as well as the Strength that comes with Barbarian. And Constitution saving throws are really important with this build because it is a martial, and so if it gets poisoned, we're not going to be able to perform our sneak attacks. And that's something we want to do. So we want good saves against getting poisoned. So at level 1, we're picking up our 12 hit points plus our Constitution modifier. We're picking up Rage and Unarmored Defense. Unarmored Defense is particularly nice in this build because as an Aarakocra, we can't wear medium armor. And often it's just best to wear medium armor as a Barbarian until your stats are quite a bit higher than what you would start out with point buy. So we get to actually use the Unarmored Defense because of Aarakocra's limitation. Here we get to choose what skills we are proficient in. I am taking Athletics and Perception, as I feel those two are the standouts on the Barbarian's selection list. Moving into level 2, this is where we begin our multi-class. We take 1 level in Rogue. And this is where one of the first synergies I like between the Rogue and the Barbarian is that it is required to have at least 13 in Dex and 13 in Strength to do this multi-class. And Barbarians already want that much Dex and Strength, so it's a very natural fit to include Rogue into a Barbarian's stats. Now when we take this multi-class, Rogues allow us to add a skill from their skill list, and we're going to take Stealth, because we do want to be a stealthy boy. With our Expertise, I would like to take Athletics. Now the reason for this is that a Barbarian with Athletics Expertise is so fantastic at grappling, and we're going to have the ability to fly as well. So that's going to open us up to a ton of combinations, and it's pretty cool how Rogues help out Barbarians with their grapple game so much, which is another synergy that, I didn't really think about before doing this build. As for our second Expertise, I'm going to grab Stealth because I do want to be that Infiltrator stealthy boy, which flying is also going to help with, so we're getting this trifecta of synergies going on here. This is where we also pick up our Sneak Attack and Thieves' Cant. In order to get Sneak Attack, you need to use a Finesse weapon. Now, that Finesse weapon doesn't have to be using Dexterity, so we are going to be using Finesse weapons, short swords, but we're going to be using our Strength modifier to attack with them, and still get the Sneak Attack benefits. Our next 2 levels are also going to be in Rogue. The reason for this is we want to get to our Roguish archetype as soon as possible, which is going to be the Swashbuckler. By being a Rogue, we're going to get access to our Cunning action. Cunning action allows us to use our bonus action to do all sorts of different things. The big one for us is going to be Dash. We already move at 50 feet, just as a flying Aarakocra. With dash, we now move at 100 feet per round, which is pretty crazy just by using a bonus action. Combine that with fancy footwork, and fancy footwork, whoever we attack, whether we hit or not, cannot make opportunity attacks against us. So now we have this crazy flying speed, and we can move through multiple different enemies in order to do this hit and run playstyle that we're going to really be looking for in this build. This will be a good time to mention that in this build I'm going to be using dual wielding. I will have 2 short swords in my hands, or a short sword and nothing in the other hand, potentially to pull out a dagger to throw, or to pull out a short sword to continue attacking. You have to decide whether you want this extra attack or you want the extra movement, and that's a decision you're going to have to make case by case scenario. Sometimes the movement will be better, sometimes the extra attack will be better. We also get to add our charisma modifier to our initiative. Although our charisma won't be high because our points have been allocated elsewhere, it's basically a +1 to initiative. And we can also get sneak attack off on people who are isolated without needing advantage or an ally. However, because we are barbarians and we can reckless attack, more often than not, we will have advantage. So this is actually less of a benefit than normal. The main thing we're getting from the Swashbuckler is the ability to move through enemies without getting opportunity attacked. From here, we are going back to Barbarian, and we're going to take the next 4 levels in Barbarian. At Barbarian 2, so our level 5, we are going to get access to our Reckless Attack to begin attacking every attack at advantage, which is great for getting sneak attacks. And then we can move away to protect ourselves from the advantage that they have against us. So this hit and run playstyle is synergized between rogues and barbarians. At the same level, we're also going to pick up Danger Sense, which is going to allow us to have advantage on our dexterity saving throws, which I kind of just view as proficiency at this level. So we basically have proficiency in dexterity, constitution, and strength saving throws, which is pretty sweet, all the physical abilities. At level 6, Barbarian 3, we're going to pick up our primal path, and we are choosing the Ancestral Guardian. The reason for this is this highly supports this hit and run playstyle that I've been talking about, because when we hit them, now they are marked, meaning if they attack anyone besides us, they're going to have a disadvantage on the attack, and their attack is going to be resisted, so it's going to do half damage, which is a crazy reduction. So the only person they're really going to want to attack is us, but we're not going to be around to attack due to our crazy movement speed. At level 4, we get to pick up a feat. I'm going to pick up the Slasher feat. 1, we need a half feat to get our 17 strength to 18, and 2, because it fits the same playstyle we're going for in that it hits and debuffs the enemy, and then we get away. So how it debuffs them is it drops their movement speed by 10, so now they're even less likely to either get to our allies or us or run away. It just makes it much more difficult for them to do their jobs by us decreasing their mobility. Now, Barbarian 5, 8th level for us, is a very important level because we get extra attack, as well as some extra movement speed, both of which synergize with this build fantastically. The reason extra attack is so important is not necessarily to increase our damage output, but to make sure we hit. Think about how important it is that this build hits at least once per turn. Not only are we putting down Ancestral Guardians, defending our teammates from afar, we're also getting sneak attack, and we're also putting a slasher debuff. If we're not doing that, we're not doing our job. So if we miss the first attack, having the second attack really helps us, and then if that one misses as well, then we can go for the third attack. All at advantage because of reckless attack. We should be hitting the mass majority of times, but there are those times where you wouldn't without the extra attack, which is why it's so important. The fast movement speed puts us at a whopping 60 feet of flying speed, doubled, so we're moving 120 feet per round most rounds. Pretty crazy movement. This build feels a lot like the Mercy Monk. The Mercy Monk has high mobility, gets in there, and it poisons a very specific target, and now that target's gonna have disadvantage on all of its attacks. But that build is dependent on key points, which will eventually run out, where this one can do its thing forever. Not only is it giving them disadvantage on the attacks, it's also giving them resisted damage. So it's kind of doing the Mercy Monk's job even better. And I just love how the Rogue and the Barbarian both synergize on this hit and run playstyle and just high mobility that hits hard. It feels really cool. Now after 8th level, we're going to take the Rest Rogue. This is going to continually increase our sneak attack damage, which will make us hit harder with that one very big attack that we do every single turn. It's also going to make us better out of combat. We can be a great infiltrator. I'd probably take expertise in Thieves' Tools and Perception next to help us with that infiltration job. We make excellent scouts because of our flying. So there's a lot we can do out of combat, which is pretty cool synergy once again, because barbarians are known for not being able to do a lot out of combat, and rogues are known for being able to do a ton out of combat. So marrying the two really gives barbarians that extra feeling of being able to do a lot more. Another synergy between the rogues and the barbarians is that with the advantage on dexterity saving throws as well as evasion, we're very likely to take no damage from those AoE dexterity based spells and attacks, which is pretty sweet. I will say that Roguearians could do several different things. I took a look at taking the mobile feat and taking the totem, but taking the elk, so you move 15 feet quicker. That's something else you can do to kind of mimic this playstyle, but I just felt getting that Ancestral Guardians debuff really takes us from just a damage dealer to a major debuffer, and you're kind of tanking for your whole team as a striker without you having to tank with your health, which is awesome. This build really can avoid any sort of melee presence. It debuffs one melee-based attacker so hard, like really freaking hard. But if there's a dedicated sniper, well, now they can shoot you from afar and you really can't escape their range, and they're not going to be moving, and they might be a spellcaster, so your debuff's not going to do a ton. Well, that's when your expertise to athletics comes in. You can go in there and fly them up in the air and suplex them if your DM will allow it, or just pin them and grapple them so they're debuffed pretty hard, and then you can stay on top of them and shank them over and over again. So you have options. You can be where you need to be if you're doing this hit and run, or you can be like this wrestler when needed, which I really like the versatility. So this is where rogues and barbarians synergize. Where they have some anti-synergies really falls into their bonus action. The first turn you're going to want to bonus action rage, which isn't going to allow us to do the bonus action dash, which means we might not be able to get the attack we want off, and if we can't get a good attack off, do we lose rage? So that's where like a dagger comes into play, where we can do a thrown weapon attack. It won't be able to be reckless, but we make an attack. If it hits, we can still do sneak attack damage, but if it misses, then at least we can keep our rage. And maybe we'll be able to do our rage, go in there and swing and hit them and retreat if we, if the situation's right, but we won't always be able to. Something pretty cool is Ancestral Guardians does allow us, when we use a ranged attack, to still mark them with that disadvantage and resistance, which is pretty sweet. We are less tanky than most barbarians, and we are flying around, so if we're knocked in the air, then we also have the falling damage. So there's some risk to playing this style. But ultimately, I do like how everything comes together to feel pretty great. This has been the Roguearian build. It's kind of a new format that we're trying here. Tell us what you thought about it. Do you like this more than the flavor builds or less? I'd love to hear your opinion. Also, what would you do with your Roguearian build? How would you change it up? Is there something I missed? Is there a way to make it better? Let me know in the comments down below. We are D&D Daily. We release new D&D content every single day, so if that's interesting to you, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.